You're fushleim. I feel good. Take care of yourself. Get some healthy food. Sufganiyot. Coffee. Good idea. Where's mine? So we are going to do two things today. First, we're going to look at finish out our morning prayers outline. Everybody has the page, hopefully. If you don't, I can give you one for now. If you
I'll return this.
You'll return it. Okay. You have one upstairs, so it's okay. It's fine. So we pretty much finished the sheet, but what I'd like to do, just to complete the exercise, is really for you all to write down. Take out a piece of paper and a pen, please. If you don't have one, I can give you a piece of paper and even a pen. But it looks like everybody has one. You guys are good. And I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation. It's an exercise. Okay. I'd like you to take the Siddur and open up and imagine that you come. I'm going to give you a few questions, okay? I'm going to write down 3 different scenarios.
Okay.
3 different scenarios. Scenario number 1.
Can you write on the board if that's
yeah,
okay?
Sure, good idea.
Yeah, just so that way I don't have to like juggle them on my mind as I'm
sure, it's a good idea. My pleasure. I'll move the screen. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so scenario number 1. You come to shul in the morning. That's going to be common of all the theme. There's 3 different morning, and you estimate that you have 10 minutes before the tzibur, the community, minyan, all right, for the minyan starts the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei. It's just a short form. Okay, that's number 1. Exercise number 1. Exercise number 2. Same thing. You estimate that you have now this time not 10 minutes, but you have 20 minutes before the minyan starts the Shemona Esrei. Okay? And exercise number 3 is same thing. You get to shul and you estimate you have only 5 minutes before the minyan starts the Shemona Esrei. Start with those. Write down what you think the answers is. What are you going to pray? You have the list before you. You have the Siddur open. I want you everything from start to finish. You haven't said a thing yet. You haven't. Maybe you said Modani in the morning. That's all. Modani. That's the beginning. You said that when you opened up your eyes, even before you did Nitilat Yadayim. You've said Modani lefanecha. Nothing else. Nothing else. Okay. Yes.
I have a question, and it's not a smart ass question. It's just a genuine question. When you say are we supposed to think about ourselves in terms of our own pace?
Exactly. You.
Okay, not like a general. You.
Not a general person. Not a Jew. A you.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Practical exercise here.
And are we going to assume tefillin as well? Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Do I need to assume tefillin? Or
you have to, it's up to you. But
like include tefillin, yeah.
I'm going to add a 4th exercise. Okay. Estimate you have 30 minutes.
Okay.
Okay? Before. Okay. I see somebody's with us on the YouTube. Send us a chat and say hello.
Good morning.
Where's Weinberg? He just left. We have like 4 questions. What do you like? Imagine if you in 10 minutes before a meetup, what prayers would you do? The 25 and 30. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And he wants to like write down what you include. Using like this sheet as like a help if you need.
Okay.
Hey, morning. He's got their exercise. You done? You finished?
Yeah.
You finished, Machon?
Yeah, I didn't write down the name of each and every lesson, but I wrote down like to.
Okay, you can present it. You know what you think the
Yeah.
answer should be. How you doing, Yaakov? You still working on it?
I'd say I'm pretty much okay. I think if we want, we can go around and talk.
Okay, great. Okay. So let's start with you, Moshe.
Okay,
Number one.
so for
You have
number
10
one,
minutes.
I would do the morning blessings. The three most.
Explain to me what do you mean by the morning blessings? Read the list.
Okay, so I would do. You said I already did Modani.
Yeah.
So I would do the blessings on the Torah. Put on my tefillin. The 15 blessings. I might skip like Adon Olam and Gigdal.
Just say what you'll include, not what you'll skip.
Okay, so yeah.
That was the exercise. Write down what you're going to say. So
Okay.
let's. Are you ready to continue from that? Keep going.
Yeah. I would do the 15 blessings. I already said put on my talis and tefillin. And then I would skip korbanot because I never do korbanot. For Pazukei de Zimra, I would do the first and the last, and Ashrei. I would do the whole Shema.
You can do that all in 10 minutes.
Minyan the
Yeah.
Shema.
Hey, wait. Let him
Minyan
answer.
Deshma.
Well, we'll
Wow,
discuss it
that's
afterwards.
impressive.
Go ahead.
And I think that would take me about. And I think, but by then I would have finished all of that before they finished the Amidah, so I could start the Amidah while they're still doing it.
It's a nice answer. I don't think halachically it's correct. I think we're gonna fine tune it a little bit, but
So it's not a nice answer.
you put some thought into it, and
hopeful
you're not
answer.
absolutely wrong, but you wouldn't get full marks. Not that I'm giving out marks or anything, but I'm saying in terms of you ask me what's the
In the hypothetical marks you
proper
give.
thing to do, halachically, I think you need some fine tuning.
Okay.
Bezrat Hashem. But thank you for your answer. Somebody else, what would you do if you had 10 minutes before the minyan? It's ready to start. Yeah, Jake.
I would do the tefillin of blessings of Torah, and I think I'd only at this time have enough time to like say maybe the 3 passages of Shema.
Interesting. Okay. And then what would you do?
I mean, at that point, the 10 minutes would be over.
And then what would you do?
I'd join the minyan.
Join
or
the
a minyan.
Okay.
Or a Amida.
Good. What's your answer?
So I start from Netilat
Thomas.
Yadayim, Asher Yatzar, Elochei Neshomo, Bרכות התורה, 15 blessings, Talit Tefillin, then Baruch Shema, Yishtabach, Bרכות for Shema, and Shema.
So basically say everything that's in the column of primary prayers, and you hopefully finish that in 10 minutes.
I skip the Hakatat Yitzhak, Korbanot,
Right?
Pesukei de Zimra.
Some of them. You
Okay,
skip totally?
yeah.
You
No,
said
no,
you
no,
said Baruch
I
Shema
say
Ashrei and
Baruch
Yishtabach.
Shema and Shabach.
Okay.
The start and the
Right,
end,
right.
that's it.
Right. And you've been praying long enough so you can do that in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
That's impressive.
Good. Good. Yeah.
Kind of similar. I would do all the morning blessings from the Netilat Yadayim to the 15 blessings.
Yeah.
Baruch Shema. Usually I'd probably do Ashrei as well,
Mm-hmm.
but skip the 5 Psalms.
Okay.
Then Yishtabach, of course, and then Shema and its blessings.
Mhm.
And then yeah.
And then you'd be ready. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think you'd be done in 10 minutes
yeah.
to join the community. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Russell, how have you been
Hang on a
praying
second.
up till now? You know what these all are, by
Oh,
the
yes,
way, because you weren't here for the classes. But...
Right, so I know what these are.
Okay, great.
So if I had 10 minutes before, normally I would have said like Netilat Yadayim, Asher Yatzar, but right as I'd gotten up and out of the shower and everything in the morning.
Okay, so those are covered. Okay,
Right.
if you do that way, that's fine. Okay.
And if I had 10 minutes after that upon arrival, I would say the 15 blessings in the Interruptions when I put a talit on. And
Okay.
I would say, typically I would say like the initial, like the command for the tomato offering, like for the,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and I would say Ashrei and then Shema and its blessings.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. Good. And let's see. There's let's make this harder. I'll tell you what I think you should do in a minute. But let's say you have
Only
number
5
3. You have only 5 minutes before the community is going to be starting their Amidah. What was your answer on that, Moshe?
I mean, I wrote just to do the morning blessings.
And then what?
I mean, I thought what are we supposed, like, if they have already started the Amidah, or like when is it too late to start the Amidah? Let me ask you this question.
This is a hidden assumption of the questions.
Let me answer
It's
your question with a
very
question.
you're
What are the
good.
rules about when we're supposed to start the Amidah?
Aha. So the assumption of the question is the ideal thing is to start the Amidah together with the community. All these questions have been based around that, right? We're trying to find when the minyan starts. They just want to answer.
I was under the assumption that as long as you start the Amidah before they finish the Amidah, it is considered as having done the Amidah with the minyan.
Yes, that's not wrong. That's
But it's all right.
It's not ideal, but it's not wrong. It's a good point. But now we're getting closer to getting to the critical factors here. What's the most important thing? What would you do, Yaakov, if you had only 5 minutes?
I'd put on tefillin and say Shema, and that's it.
I'm gonna say, okay, and then you'd say the Amidah, obviously.
Yeah,
But you're all assuming that.
Yes.
Yeah. Thomas, what about you? What would you do?
I start from Netilat, then arrive to 15 blessing, Talit and Tefillin. Of course, so from Netilah I say Asher Atar Eloheinu Shemo, but always so.
Okay.
Then I arrive to Talit Tefillin, and then I start with the blessing of the Shema.
You could skip straight to the blessings of the Shema.
Yeah.
Makes sense. 5 minutes. That's all you have before the Amidah. Okay. Russell, what was your thinking? If you only had 5 minutes.
Talit, Ashrei, Shema is blessings.
Okay.
But
Makes
no
some sense. Makes sense what you're saying.
No three brachos, no blessings for the Torah.
That's what he said. That's what he said.
I wouldn't be able to do that in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Without
All
the
right.
blessing of the Torah,
So
they're
I'm pushing you
not
here.
able to say that.
So I'm pushing you here because I want to get to the
Okay.
You just don't.
the critical things. What's that? Say again.
At that point, you just don't. You just do it on your own.
There we go. That's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to figure out where do I just give up on communal prayer.
I think I might
I'm
need
not
to-
going to make it. I can't. There's a certain level of basics that I have to say in order to get up to the Amidah that I can't skip. And if I'm not going to be able to get them quickly before I join the tzibur, I'm going to have to say the Amidah myself after the tzibur. Maybe I'll catch the tail end of the repetition, like Moshe is saying. Maybe there's a second best, but there is a certain bare minimum that I have to say before I can get to the Amidah prayer. And this is what I want to teach you. I want to show you. Yes, Moshe.
Okay, so we call this a Siddur.
Yes,
It is a organized group of all the prayers. This is what we've been learning.
correct.
How important is the order? I understand it's literally called. Does that have the word?
Order.
Okay, it literally has
Siddur,
it's literally called an order.
Right.
But how important is the actual order? So if I
It's
say
like, remember
the morning
bell curve he
blessings,
makes?
if I say the blessings, I remember the bell curve. But I'm saying if I say the morning blessings, I just go to the Amidah. Then I do Sukkot to Zimmer after.
It's a good question. It's a good question. Is that legitimate? Is that kosher? Let's say you skip some of them Sukkot Zimra. Do you have to go back and make it up afterwards, or is it only localized? Is that important? So these are all good questions. So let's start with the basics. Basics are. Now there are of course different opinions in halach. I'm going to give you my opinion, which I believe is the opinion of most poskim. Of course, you're always going to find some other opinions. What you have in the second column, what's called primary prayers on the page, is the bare minimum of what you must say every day before the Amidah. Do not skip. Netilat Yadayim, Asher Yatzer, Elokai Neshama, the 3 blessings on the Torah with the Torah passages after them. Putting on your talit and tefillin, that can be, if you don't have talit and tefillin, you can still pray the morning service. So you don't have a talit and tefillin. But if you do, you should put them on. Take the time to put them, you must take the time to put them on for the morning prayers. Do not pray without them if you have the ability to. But if you don't, you can continue. That's why it's sort of almost a must. The 15 blessings, do not skip them. Say them here. Next, the Tamid, you can skip. That it's a primary prayer, but that can be totally skipped. The Baruch Shamar, the Ashrei and Ishtabach should not be skipped, even if you're going to miss.
Even Ashrei? You must see.
Yes, the Baruch Shamar, the Ashrei and the Ishtabach, not the 5 Hallelujahs. That can be skipped, but the Baruch Shamar, the Ashrei and the Ishtabach cannot be skipped.
Sorry,
Two
repeat that
bless-
one more time. Sorry, Baruch Shamar.
It's right on the list. I'm just reading straight out of the
They
list.
say everything on morning blessings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I see that. Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
The Baruch Shamar, the Ashrei and the Ishtabach have to be said. The 2 blessings before the Shema, the 3 passages of Shema, and the 1 blessing after the Shema must be said. We do not skip them. We do not shorten them. We do not say the Shema without the blessings. That is improper ideal practice. If you ask me what the halacha is, I would tell you, basically you have one calculation. You see this list? If you can recite all of it before the community gets to the Amidah, then you're going to be able to pray with the community. And if not, you won't. You'll have to be praying on your own. Maybe you'll catch up later. You'll get some benefit of being with the community because you'll be able to answer the Kaddish, you'll be able to answer the Kedusha, you'll interrupt wherever you are in your prayers. I interrupt our regular scheduled programming because the Chazan is saying Baruch Hu, right? You can do that. We talked about the interruptions in the middle. Wherever you're in the middle of doing, you can stop in the middle and answer. But in terms of the regular scheduled program, this is the bare minimum of the regular scheduled programming. For each individual Jew, when he wakes up in the morning, this list up until the Amidah, there's nothing here you can really skip, except for, of course, the Tamid, the daily sacrifice that you could skip. As I said, this section of Korbanot is often skipped entirely. I have that on the page in the middle section, in the middle column. That is the bottom line. So you have to say all the morning blessings. You have to say the bare minimum of the Psukei de Zimra, and you have to say the entire Shema and its blessings. Before you say your Amidah, you cannot get to the Amidah, even though the community is going to start without you. If they start without you, you'll catch up later. You'll do your best you can. Maybe you'll catch them on the tail end, like Moshe is saying. Maybe by the time I finish all this list, and I finish my Shema and the blessings, maybe the Chazan will still be doing the repetition, and when I start my Amidah, it'll be like joining the community's Amidah. True. It's a true point, Moshe. That's second best. Ideal, though, is how long would it take you to do this list? How long would it take you? 30 minutes? 20 minutes?
45.
15.
45? Okay.
15.
That is personal. Obviously, it's a personal based on your experience and your practice. And that is the sweet point that you're looking for. I have to come to shul, if it's 45 minutes before the community starts the Shema Yisrael, in order to say the bare minimum of basic prayers. You're not saying the whole Psukei de Zimra. You're skipping the entire Korbanot.
Yeah.
And but everything else you can't skip. So you must recite all those before you can say your Amidah, whether with the community or without the community. So ideally, you want to pray with a minyan. You should come if it's 30 minutes before. You estimate how long it takes you. It's personal. Most people, how long does it take in shul before you get to the Amidah?
It's like 30 minutes.
About 20 minutes usually. It's about 20 minutes. It's about 10 minutes for the Psukei de Zimra and 10 minutes for the Shema and its blessings. About 20 minutes. That's why most people, the shul, starts at 7, and then you get to the Shemona Esrei at about 7:20, maybe 7:25, approximately. Why do they have that time? Because fine. Maybe they're saying the entire Psukei de Zimra. Maybe they're saying some of the Korbanot, but usually the Minyanim start after Korbanot. Because you've already said the primary prayers, the morning blessings, excuse me. Yeah. You've said those before the Chazan starts the communal section. But that's the key, and I'm glad I clarified that. Yes?
What about Shema? Does that have to be a communal thing?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Of course, ideally everything should be said with the community.
Right.
If you can keep pace throughout, by all means, start when they start, finish when they start, when they finish. Each section by section. That's why the Chazan says it out loud,
right,
so the community can hear and follow along and be at the same pace as him. But if it doesn't work for you, because you go slower than the Chazan. So start earlier. You don't have to say. The most critical point is to start the Shemona Esrei with the community. Clear? Sorry, Jacob saying, "Oh no, I have to get up earlier to say the basics."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
I had one more question. Say you come a little late, and you have to do all these blessings. They already started Amidah, and you're catching up, but do you have to like stand up for certain things if they're doing something?
So again, that goes into the discussion which I showed you. There's the chart at the back of the book about interruptions in prayer. So if you're praying your prayer because you came late or it just takes you longer, and the community is saying something else.
Right.
It depends what that something else is. If that something else is just Shema, ignore. Some people say you should cover your hand.
Right.
Take your hand and cover your eyes, so it doesn't. So it looks like, or maybe say the first paragraph of Shema. Depends where you are. The rules of interruptions, but Kedusha usually would interrupt and stand up and say at least the three
Like
major lines.
The repetition.
The repetition, you don't have to pay attention except for the Kedusha.
Okay.
Usually you don't interrupt your own prayers for the repetition. But the Kedusha part and the Kaddish and the Baruch Hu, there's certain responses that you're supposed to say that are so important that you have to interrupt what you're doing. So that's the chart at the back of the book I showed you before. Those are the major lines inside the Kedusha.
It's usually grayed out. Considers
Kedusha
is grayed out in the Amidah.
Well, that's because you only say it in the repetition together with the community.
Right.
But yeah.
So when you get to that point, when you're sitting, you stand up and do it with them.
So you would do with them. It depends what you're saying, what you personally are saying. If you're in the middle of your Sukkot Zimra, you should only say the key lines of the Kedusha, not the entire grayed out section.
Okay.
Inside the Kedusha, I showed you the other day, maybe you weren't here, but there's the three major lines. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh.
Right.
Baruch Kavod Hashem Yimkomo, and Yimloch. There's a debate about Yimloch, whether you can say that too. Those are the three major lines. Those you can say even when you're in the middle of the Psukei de Zimra, for example.
Right.
And even if you're in the middle of Shema, for example. It's a little more complicated, but that's the basic halacha. Yeah.
What if you find yourself that you're in the middle of your Shemona Esrei, and then they get to the repetition before you get there?
It happens a lot. Yeah, sure.
And so then they start saying the things that you're supposed to respond to while you're in the middle of your own.
Right, exactly. So that is different than any other place that you happen to be in your personal prayers. Like I said, if you're in Sukkot Zimra, if you're in the Shema, you interrupt. You join the community. If you're in the silent, your own personal silent Amidah is where you're up to, you don't interrupt for anything.
Cool.
You're talking to the king. Don't interrupt.
Right.
Some people say you can be silent and listen, but you don't speak. So maybe stop what you're doing and just sort of wait. Listen to the community saying listen to the Chazan, but you definitely don't speak. You don't respond. No responses when you're in the middle of the Amidah ever. Okay. Unless it's a pikuach nefesh, it's a danger to your life. Police come, they're gonna shoot you, slice off your head. That's happened.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's say this: I'm in the middle of the Shema, and all of a sudden, Yaakov just collapses. I'm like literally saying the words of the Shema. Yaakov collapses. Obviously, I noticed.
Stop what you're doing.
Stop what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Me and some other people take Yaakov out to the center area. We call, we sit there with him. We wait.
Call the ambulance. 100%. Yeah, good. They take them away. You go back to your prayers. If someone else is taking care of them, obviously.
But do I take off like word for word exactly where I left off, or do I start the prayer again, or what? What does that mean?
Also, good question. It's a good question. So when you're in the middle of your Shemona Esrei, there's actually a Mishnah that talks about it. Let's say the Chazan has an attack or something, a heart attack, and he's in the middle of praying. What do you do? So the Mishnah says that someone else takes over. Obviously, you take care of the guy, but everybody else, we're in the middle of praying. The community is praying, So if he's being taken care of, so you got to continue. So someone else takes over where he left off. Now, if he was in the middle of a blessing, so then the new guy takes over from the beginning of the blessing that the person stopped in the middle of. So there is the concept of units, right? 18 blessings, each one is a unit. So if you were in the middle of a unit, you would start over again from the beginning of that unit. But when you're not in the Shemona Esrei, and you're not in the saying 18 blessings, you're just reciting texts, you're reciting passages like the Shema, you're reciting the three parts of the Shema. So you go back to wherever you were. You hear that, Moshe? You go back to wherever you were. There's no real concept of a unit except for a blessing.
Now, what if I was saying the Shema in the middle of the Shema? I do the Pikuach Nefesh stuff. Now I'm back in Brit Knesset, but the time for saying the Shema is over. But I technically already started the Shema. So I started the Shema on time, but like now it's like 2 hours later.
Yeah.
I just got back from the hospital.
Right. Right. So the law is that you're allowed to say the Shema even after the appropriate time, because basically you're reading verses from the Torah. So you can read verses from the Torah even at night if you want. It's obviously not the right time for the morning Shema. You can still recite the Shema. The blessings is more complicated. Blessings, they follow what the time for Shachrit is. There's an end time for Shachrit. We spoke about it a little bit. The end of the third hour is from sunrise. The end of the third hour is the latest time for Shema. By the way, it's kind of early nowadays, 8:45. And the last time for Amidah, for Shacharit, last time you really should be saying Shacharit is an hour after that, after the end of the fourth hour. It's like 9:45. Now, what happens after that? The law is you're allowed to still say, again, there's some debate, but you're still allowed to say the morning prayers until midday. There's some people that say you shouldn't say the blessings of the Shema if you're past the 9:30 time, past the time of the time for prayer, but you can be lenient if necessary and recite the entire morning Shacharit service up until midday, till Chatzot. That's a leniency, but I stand behind it, and it's justifiable, and it keeps it simple. And so for beginners, you should know that if you get up late one day and you pass the time for Shema, and you pass the time for Tefillah, you still should pray and recite the entire prayer service up until Chatzot, till midday. Once midday comes and you haven't prayed your morning prayers, you've lost out on your morning prayers. There is a concept we'll learn about sometime. That's something called a make-up prayer.
Mincha.
At Mincha, you do a second Mincha, a second Amidah, and that counts as makeup for the morning Shacharit Amidah that you missed. So that we do. But the blessings of the Shema, can't do them. The Psuki de Zimra, you can't do them. I mean, you can't say the blessings. You can always say the Tehillim. The Tehillim, they're just Tehillim. You can say Tehillim all day long if you like. But in terms of the proper, structure that we're saying now, one thing that you can do it in the afternoon, if you wake up really late, it's a Sunday, okay? Of course, you can put on tefillin, good. Essentially, all of the morning blessings,
Right.
all the 15 blessings. Of course, the blessings on the Torah too. If you haven't said them yet, basically all the morning blessings you can say them all day long. If you haven't yet, from the morning time.
Because when you just wake up, that's your morning.
That's your morning, exactly right. But that is a leniency. But ideally, you should do morning prayers in the morning. That is a little bit surprising. But yeah,
Another
questions, yeah.
If I miss the Shacharit,
Mhm.
I need to make two different Amidah
Minchas.
service.
Yeah, there's
But,
such a...
so the first one that I made is for Mincha, and the second for Shacharit.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, usually
Yeah.
that's the way it's...
But those two are the same, always for Mincha service.
the Amidah is the same, yeah. The Amidah
Yeah.
is pretty much the same, all three prayers.
When I start to do the second, so I finish.
You wait the amount of time it takes you to say Shalom Alecha Rebbe Omori. It's a halachic definition of time. Yeah,
So
six,
say you have
six
to walk
seconds.
3 steps or something.
It's the time. Well, you're walking
Something.
3 steps anyways, right? Because at the end of your first Amidah, you're taking 3 steps.
So
So
before,
Something.
pretty much, you just wait a few seconds and you can start your second Amidah.
okay, so before saying Tachanun,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
before saying Tachanun. And then you say Tachanun afterwards. But I don't know why you're even asking this. Who would do such a thing? Can you fathom
It's just weird.
missing Shachrit totally?
Well, you know,
Depends.
something
I don't
happens.
even
You know,
want-
it's so much
I-
pikuach nefesh that's happening at the Machon in the dorms, in between us
Ah.
getting up and coming
I
downstairs.
wish us all good health. And,
Yeah.
no wars. Wartime, I could have said.
And,
Okay, wartime, you got to battle, you know.
I battle with waking up.
But
But honestly, no, I don't.
you're a mighty warrior.
My problem isn't that I get there late. My problem is I'm so slow.
I understand. Yeah, okay. Takes time. It's a process, but still get quicker and quicker. But hopefully, you won't lose any of the intention that you have while you're getting quicker. Another question? Yeah. No, you want to? Okay. We good?
And before I was going to ask, is midday 12 or chatzot?
Chatzot.
And then it's
Chatzot. Chatzot. Yeah. Halachic chatzot nowadays around 11:30. Okay, because you take the daylight and divide it by 2 and find the
Shows
midpoint. That's
Like
correct.
that.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so that was just sort of a way of summary. I'm glad we did that exercise to show you that, and all the rest of the stuff you can skip. You should. There's no time factor. There's no trying to catch up with the tzibur. Really, what you're looking for to catch with the tzibur is start with the minyan, the amidah. And you're right, Moshe, that there is a longer time of, it's still considered to be communal prayer. If you're, say, your amidah, anytime, the truth is, Rav Ovadia Yosef has a tshuva, he's very lenient. He says, let's say the tzibur has finished their amidah and they're saying tachnun, and you start yours. Is that considered communal prayer? Because you're not really saying your amidah at the time they're saying their amidah. He says yes. Because the tachnun, we explained, is a little bit just an extension of the amidah. And it's as if the community is still praying. And let's say they finish tachnun and they're saying Ashrei. Or they're reading from the Torah. Or they say Ashrei, Uvalet Zion. And now you've finished all of your long list of the 15 blessings. And the Sukkot is different. There's Shema. And the rabbi told you I can't skip any of it. Right? Or you can skip very little bits of it. You can skip lots of the Psukkah Yizirma, but you can't skip any of the Shema. And its blessings. Do not skip the blessings of the Shema. And so finally, but they're already almost finished.
The Torah readings, sir?
The Torah reading, they're finished the Ashrei. Let's say they're even up to Aleinu, okay? We all know the Ashkenazim think Aleinu is the last thing in the prayer service.
I get so excited.
What do you mean they think? They know.
Well, actually, no, because in Ashkenazi service, after the Aleinu, there's still the Shir Shalom, right? And in Israel, there's still the Ein Kelokenu and the incense. Let's say the community is still saying one of those. Rav Ovadia Yosef, he says, when push comes to shove, he puts on his godly garb, and he says, I think that God considers it to be communal prayer, even if you start your Shemona Esrei when the community's past the Shemona Esrei and saying all those extra add-ons, everything until the end of the service, it's still as if you're joining the community, and it's better than nothing. It's still, in his eyes, considered communal prayer, that you've joined the community, and that's why, even if you're late, and it might take you a little while, don't give up. Don't give up. Keep trying to get to the Amidah, if at all possible, before the service is ended, because you'll be getting the benefit of saying communal prayer versus only private prayer. And if you can't even do that, you come really late, or you're very slow. Even if I start together with the community, I'm going to get up to the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, only when they're already having breakfast. That's what you have to do. You can't skip these basic prayers.
Does that still
None of
count
them.
as communal prayer?
No, it does not. Breakfast, I haven't seen a tshuva that says, well, the community is eating breakfast.
Let's say you
It's still
start-
part of their morning prayers.
let's
No,
say you
that
start
I haven't
the
seen.
Amidah, whilst they're doing Aleinu, and then they do everything after that, and they finish, and you've still got a quarter of your Amidah.
Doesn't matter. What matters is the beginning of your Amidah, that you start the Amidah. That's considered to be the timing that you want to ideally match with their start of the Amidah. And then, of course, your Amidah could take another hour, but it's still because you started together with them, then theirs is going to take 5 minutes or less. But because you started together with them, so your whole Amidah of an hour is considered to be together with the community. Okay, so it's the beginning of the Amidah together that's critical that you're looking for. Okay, it's good. Good.
Very good.
All right. Good. I'm glad that's clear. I gave you your marching orders, as they say. Reggie, you're right.
Our Miranda rights.
What if you're on the you have a doctor's appointment, or you're rushing to work,
Yeah.
class, or something, like up to what point? Like, I guess what would the second half be? What, just everything here? Like the second half, like if you
Afterwards.
yeah, afterwards.
The stuff afterwards. So let's look at the outline and see what's on afterwards. Okay.
Okay.
We have section. The Amidah is 5, right? The middle, the center of the page.
Sorry, I thought you were
It's
like.
fine. Yeah.
My
Yeah.
apologies.
What comes afterwards? So let's take a look. What's 6? The repetition. Well, that you can't do by yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number 7, the vidu, you can say by yourself, except for the 13 attributes of mercy. You got to skip that. Number 8, the tachnun, you can say that by yourself, no problem. And the Torah reading, you can't read by yourself. I mean, you can always read Torah, but it's not with the Sefer Torah,
What if it was with a C?
I have a question.
You can always study out of the Torah. There's my son learns in yeshiva where the Rosh Yeshiva has a strange custom. Excuse me for saying so. He knows it's strange. He does it anyways. He wants to educate people that the Sefer Torah, the scroll that we keep in the shul, in the Aron Kodesh, it's not only for show. It's actually the Torah. It's actually like the book that we're supposed to be learning. So when he gives shir, there's a few specific classes that he gives, maybe about Parsha or about Chumash. He actually takes the Sefer Torah out from the scroll, puts it on his desk. And that's the book that he has in front of him.
That's good.
And he reads the psukim out of the Sefer Torah. So you can always read from the Sefer Torah. What we're talking about here is the communal reading where you have a bracha before and a bracha afterwards. You need a minyan to make the communal reading. But just to read out of the Sefer Torah, that's what they're for, to learn, to study from. Of course, that's a little bit out there. But next, the tachnun that you can do on your own. The Torah reading. By all means, if you're not with the community, why not read that portion that everybody else read? Because you're supposed to learn on Mondays and Thursdays a little bit of the portion. Why not? And on Shabbat, you've all been on Shabbat, not in shul. You should read the parsha. I think we said yesterday you have to read the parsha twice each week, at least. And
You have to start the
once
parsha.
in the
No, you have to finish the entire part.
By the time the community reads the parsha on Shabbat, you should have
Finished?
ideally finished.
Throughout the week is what you think.
Throughout the week, you should slowly be going through the parsha so that you finish reading it twice, and once with the translation and Onkelos, if possible, or Rashi, or both, before the Torah reading in the community in Shabbat morning. And then, guys, let's just finish. What's left? Ashrei, Lamutzach, Uvaletzion. You could say yourself. Concluding prayer, song of the day, Enke Lukeinu, incense, Alena. You can say that all yourself. So by all means, you should find time to. If you had to rush, if you had to go leave early, whatever it is, try to find time afterwards to finish it up. No problem saying all that stuff by yourself at your own pace. Okay.
Given like the Hanukkah's coming up and Hallel, is there any like rules and like specifics
Absolutely.
about that?
We're going to talk about it.
Okay.
All right. That's tomorrow's class.
Okay.
Now, let's open up our Hanukkah books. We're going to keep going on the Hanukkah introduction that we started yesterday. Here's the books of Pnei Halacha. Those who are following on at home, it's called Zemanim. You can find it online. Pnei Halacha. And if anybody else needs. But before that, I want to just once again show you this chart.
Oh,
You have it, and if you don't, I have extra copies here. I made extra copies. Pass it around if you don't have one in your booklet.
I do not have this.
You do not have that.
Oh, that one is the first one.
It's the first one you got. That's right.
It's not around.
I think you probably did want one. Let's see.
the outline of Jewish history, 3,500 years on one page for you to remember. It's very easy to remember, I believe. I made it so.
Yeah.
Because each period is divided into five. It consists of 500 years. Those at home, it looks like this. You might have it at home. Find a way to get it to you. I can put it in the WhatsApp group if that's helpful to somebody. All these pages, by the way, I can give you a digital version in the WhatsApp group. That's good for you. So let's take a look. The 7 periods, right? So the Achronim, that's the last 500 years up until the year 2000. That's the start at the end, right? You see, that's where we are. Number 1 is beginnings. We don't know exactly when Avram lived and the Yitzchak and Yaakov, and we don't know exactly when the Exodus was even. There's different opinions about it. But and then Joshua and the conquest and the judges, that's kind of prehistory in terms of archaeology.
When was the first? When was the calendar started? Like the Jewish calendar?
So
the Exodus?
It's a good question.
Because it said that's when they first started counting the first month.
Traditionally, we consider year 1 to be the creation of the world or
really?
creation of man, right? So when we say this year is 5, 7, 8, 2.
Yeah.
That's according to the traditional count of.
So we've only got 218 years left.
Only. But you know, some people say there's 7 cycles of 7 before you get to the final 7,000 years of Gula. We could be. We don't know. But the point is, I believe that the Earth, the planet Earth, is definitely shows signs of being much older than 5,700.
But we don't know what happened.
82 years. But our count is not really about geology. Our count is about human civilization. And human civilization, that's why many people say we're actually counting not from the day 1, but from day 6 when man was created. Yeah. And fine, we found a humanoid, remains from before 6,000 years ago. Well, for some reason, something happened that we consider the first man, Adam, to appear in history, in human history, 5,782 years ago. This is the traditional count. Nobody here was trying to be a scientist when they made up this count.
Well, Rob, you could say, and I know this is a very common interpretation, that the Earth was made 5,700 years ago with
very old.
With 2 billion years of history. It was made with the history.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah, Lubavitcher Rebbe, he promoted that approach. I find it a little less compelling than other approaches, but
what approach do you take?
We're reaching for
I was just presenting it. I was telling you that we're counting from
Doesn't
a certain stage of human development, of the world's development. That God created the world in order to develop. He created the world to develop over, I think we have 13 million years. Is that what the common
The Earth?
scientific
Billion.
Earth?
It's 2 billion.
I don't think you're right.
It is.
It's 2 billion.
Life itself began 1 billion
500.
years ago.
5 no, it's more about depending. Okay, for sure.
I'm not sure. But I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that count in terms of the evolution of the world from the Big Bang, which is quite commonly, I believe, by scientists today, that there was a beginning. There was a beginning. So all you have to do is say God made the beginning, and the fact that he created it such that it would take how many billions of years to. I thought it was 13.5 million, but maybe I'm wrong.
The universe is believed to be 13.7 billion years old.
That's I was right about something 13.
Yeah.
Okay. So
the dinosaurs died about 65 million years ago.
right. So whatever it is, I have no problem with that. I have no problem with
That's
that.
what it is,
We're talking about
We don't know how to
Jewish
measure time at that time.
measurement
Days, how we measure that time.
of history. We're talking about what's important to us in terms of developing a society which they say that language sort of developed between 6 and 10,000 years ago. So that sort of really
Sorry,
you
you
call
said
it
6
cultured
and
man.
10,000 years?
Yeah, something like that. So that
I
fits.
mean, maybe
that
written
fits it
language.
properly. No, No, I don't think so.
Which
Maybe written language. Maybe. I mean, listen, animals have language. The question
I was
is what you
just gonna
define
ask
as
that.
language. You know.
Dinosaurs, though,
I don't think they
studied the
spoke to
voice-
each other. I
No,
think
but they studied the voice.
ate each
box,
other.
and they sounded more like chickens.
That's
Not
interesting.
true.
Boring.
I don't remember that.
I'm not scared of them anymore. Phew! I'm gonna sleep at night. I was imagining them roaring like.
No more nightmares.
And they looked more like chickens than people think.
So I
Anyway,
apologize,
so you have
we
a
went on
question, yeah.
tangent.
I
That
got
was
one.
my question.
About-
my question. When was the first
Yes.
month, or when was? the
Okay. So
I apologize.
So, we're saying that, this is 3,500 years of history. So there was another 1,500 years of prehistory, if we're talking about approximately 6,000 years since what we can deem to be Adam, the first man, okay, for our tradition. But really, that's approximately right. We know that because we have, Baruch Hashem, recently discovered artifacts from the first temple period. That's about a year 1,000, right? So King David and King Solomon, we keep finding more stuff. It's unbelievable, really. Worldwide,
From an Arab, like 2 days ago.
3,000 years old,
I say
stuff.
we
That's
raid
pretty
the
amazing.
Vatican. Imagine we just find the third.
They don't have anything. They weren't around yet. That takes
Imagine
another
they've got the
1,000
third
years
day,
till
I may
the
just
Christians
that.
even existed. We're talking about before that, 1,000 years. Okay, we're talking about
And they-
biblical times.
they
Biblical
acquired it.
times. They didn't find it. We're the only first ones uncovering it.
Just do it anyway.
For-
That's
Fine.
and
It's
very
the most
nice way of
boring-
saying
3,000
It's
years.
the most boring place. I'm telling you. You
What
think
they
it's
stole
gonna
is
be
stuff
solid.
from the afterwards, from later stuff.
Yeah.
Good morning. Morning. I thought it was you online. I guess. Guess not.
For a little bit.
A little bit. So looking at our chart, we're not going to talk about the beginnings now. It's section 1, right? Each period is 500 years. So we're up to minus 1,000 now. I'm using the secular years. The Jewish years, of course,
So,
are important,
Is
but
this saying
confusing.
it was 1500 BCE?
Correct.
And 1000 CE.
BCE. This is all BCE. Until we get to year 0, it's BCE.
What's the difference between C and BC?
So CE means
Common
the
era.
common era,
BC.
and B is
Common
before
era.
it.
It's
yeah.
like that's like AD and whatever the other one.
Yeah.
AD is after the
Gotcha.
Anno Domino or something like
And
that.
BC is before.
It's we don't say that because I think it's the year of our Lord, right?
Right. In the year of work.
Right.
We don't
so
have Lord.
it's not our Lord. It's a different Lord.
Gotcha.
So therefore, it's common era. Before the common era is easier. Do you have one of these, Ruvain?
I just
These charts? You might have one from earlier in the class. But I have an extra.
I do have it. Yes, I do.
Do you want one for now, or do you want?
I would love one.
Great,
actually.
here,
If you
pass
have
it
an
down,
extra, that
sure.
would be wonderful.
Sure, we're just looking at, and we're gonna. The reason why I'm pulling these out again, even though some people were not here, and not just to show off that I managed to stick 3,500 years of history on one page, but also to give you a little bit of perspective on the Hanukkah story. Where is the Hanukkah and where's Purim? Okay, let's take a look. I'll be silent for a minute and let everybody think about it. No talking, no answers. Everybody formulate an answer in your mind. Where is Purim and where is Hanukkah on this chart? And which one comes first, according to that? Shah. Silent. Put your hands down. I'm going to give it 30 seconds. Think about why. Give a justified reason for both. Where you're placing Purim and where you're placing Hanukkah. And where you're placing, I'll add one more question to the mix. Where do you place Sukkot?
Rav, could you be more specific? It's like Sukkot, I mean, is
The original Sukkot.
yeah.
Not the one we celebrate every year.
The Exodus.
That's a good answer, but you were supposed to wait your turn.
No,
That's the answer. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm looking
Okay,
for.
okay,
So that's where you're placing it, 100%. I'm just trying to,
No, I was
compare and
thinking,
contrast here.
Like, when did we start celebrating Sukkot? I thought that was the question.
No,
Yes,
no.
I mean-
Well, the assumption is the Torah commanded it, so the Torah was given. In our tradition, it's in that period, right? Moshe, Sinai, Exodus. Okay, let's hear an intelligent answer from Noam. Let's hear.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
If you can.
Hanukkah
This is just
is at the Second Temple period because it was the, I don't know how to say that, it's defiling of the Second Temple. And then I want to say I thought Ahasuerus was Persian, but I'm gonna say was Purim in the sages because wasn't he Esau's grandson or something?
Okay, you got part marks on the first one and none on the second one. So you sort of said some great things. Who can help? Hirsch.
So Purim is like toward the beginning of the Second Temple period and the First Temple period because that is when the whole fiasco of Persia saying, okay, the Jews can go back, you can build a temple. Actually, we changed our mind. You can't build a temple. Yada yada yada. And this is around the time when Haman would have Haman.
Yes,
it
correct.
Hay? With a hay?
Hey,
With a
hey,
hay?
yes, hey.
Oh, it's a hay then, Haman. And this is when he had this little scheme to genocide the Jews.
Right,
Yeah,
good,
so
okay, fine.
that
That's
was the
Purim,
beginning of
good.
the Second Temple
So
period.
Purim is at the beginning of the Second Temple during the
I
Persian
said I
Persian
thought
period.
Ahasuerus was Persian.
You started off well with
I
your
didn't think we could be the-
then you
I
went
didn't think we
down
could be the
really
same
quick
one.
when you went
I
to
knew it.
Yeah, Moshe, go ahead.
I even said
So,
it. Rewind the tape.
Sukkot is from the beginnings because it's in the Chumash.
Correct.
I know that Purim is in Kesuva, is in the writings.
Right.
But
And therefore?
therefore is that either like right at the end of the First Temple or at the beginning of the Second Temple period.
Right. Good.
But I think you mentioned this yesterday while I was half asleep in my bed, feeling awful. That Hanukkah, the story of the Hanukkah, is in the Apocrypha, which
I forgot.
Which, as Hirsch obviously knows, the Apocrypha is the bits of the writings that were not included in the Tanakh. So I'm assuming that happened during the Second Temple period.
Correct. Good. Who can help more to place Hanukkah? Yes, Reuben.
Well, Hanukkah occurred during the Hasmonean time.
Well, it's right there on your page, right? The
Yeah.
Hasmoneans. So they're the leaders of the Hanukkah revolt against the Greeks. So
Yeah.
that's the Greek Empire. You see it on your page in section 3, the Second Temple. So yeah, Purim, you got it. The Purim's towards the beginning of the Second Temple period, and Hanukkah's at the end of the Second Temple period. It's 500 years. It's a long period, but we're just trying to condense all of history here. So, but you can see who's ruling Israel there, and if we just look at the first column for a second, who ruled over Israel during biblical times?
Hittites and Canaanites.
Right. Who did Avram buy the Marat HaMachpelah from?
Canaanites.
I don't know. Hittite.
Oh,
Amorite?
there's a name, a person.
Oh.
It's cool, 2 weeks ago. Read the book. Right?
It's somebody the Hittite. Yeah.
That's right.
And he
Ephron was his name.
Ephron.
Ephron, the Hittites.
yeah, what's $10 million between us?
400 silver coins, right?
Yeah, 400.
400 shekel kesef. 400 shekels. No big deal. He's a Hittite, right? So the Hittites were in the land, and of course the Canaanites. We know that they had to conquer Joshua came and conquered the land from the Canaanites. There were other nations too. We recite them in our prayers: Jebusites and the Givonites and the Amorites and lots of ites. There was. Some people say there were even termites, but I don't know. Okay, let's keep going on the page. Period 2. Finally, we got kingdom.
Sovereign.
Unified kingdom of King David and Solomon.
So when he purchased that plot in Hebron?
Yes.
From the
Ephron, the Hittites. Yes. So the kingdom then split into the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. You might have heard of it. It's a good book. Which book?
Malachim.
Malachim. Good.
And that happened under the term of Rechov.
Rechavam.
Yeah, Rechavam.
Good.
Yeah.
The son of Solomon. Good.
Son of Shlomo HaMelech.
From then on, for a good couple hundred years, there was 2 kingdoms: kingdom of Israel and kingdom of Judah. So they ruled over. That's the first column. They ruled over the land of Israel. But then, the first exile started with who? Which empire?
The Assyrians.
the Assyrian Empire, as it says on your page, came and they conquered the tribes. How many?
10.
10 out of the 12 tribes pretty much were exiled 150 years before the rest. And so the Assyrian Empire pretty much conquered all of Israel except for the, Judea area. Right, the Samaria, the upper area above Jerusalem, that was part of the 10 tribes that were exiled. So that was already not reigned under Jewish rule anymore. 150 years before the destruction of the first temple. First temple ended, very small Jewish Judean rule, and ultimately, who destroyed that? So that we learned that the Assyrian Empire was itself destroyed and taken over by the Babylonians. Nebuchadnezzar was the king at the time who conquered and destroyed the first temple. So as you can see on the left-hand side, Assyria Empire, then Babylonian Empire, and then, as the way things go, Persian Empire took over and conquered the Babylonian, and all these nations feature prominently in which book, in which image, in which dream? I'll make it easier.
Daniel.
Good. The book of Daniel, the dreams of the Babylonian king, basically foreboding his downfall, and then all of these different nations coming one after the other. What they didn't see, or it's not mentioned explicitly, is that the Persian Empire itself will be destroyed by, we spoke about it yesterday.
The Greeks.
What year?
333.
That's it. Minus 333. Alexander the Great conquers the land of Israel. We started talking about it yesterday, and that's the beginning of the Greek Empire in Israel. And for 160 years or so, the temple stood, and the Jewish practice and culture stood. There was a fight, there was a culture war, but there was still, we were allowed to have the temple and keep the Jewish practice going, and keep the mitzvot until this was when which type of Greeks were in charge of the land of Israel at first? Ptolemaic. Excellent. The Ptolemaic, the Egyptian, the Ptolemy, the general who took over Egypt. He was in charge of the land of Israel, and then it was conquered by him by the Seleucids. The Seleucid Greeks, that's the Syrian Greeks. They took over, and they were not as pleasant. The religious persecution started not long afterwards, and then we have the whole rebellion, and Matityahu and his sons ultimately turning into a long and protracted battle for independence by the Hasmoneans, as we call them today. Is that clear? Good. So this is what we're talking about. Now, what we're going to look at today is that ultimately we mentioned at the end of the history lesson yesterday that well, I guess we'll look at it tomorrow because today we're running out of time. But what we had mentioned that towards the end of the Hasmonean rule, even though we did have the temple, we purified it, and we had religious services, we were able to keep the Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh, there was infighting amongst the Jews. There were still Hellenists around. There were still some Jews who practiced other than the rabbis told them to. We mentioned the different sects. The Tzedokim, I don't think we mentioned them by name. The Tzedokim and Baitosim, they were followers of a fellow called Tzadok and a fellow called Baitos, and they tried to make their own sort of version of Judaism, which rejected a lot of the oral teachings that the rabbis were passing down to them. They wanted to, let's stick to this text. We got a Bible, it's canonized. Let's stick to the only thing that's directly written. All the stuff that's passed down by the rabbis orally, we're not going to pay any attention to that. And this was a big battle within the Jewish people. And of course, there was politics involved, as if, who's in charge, me or you? And so ultimately, they brought in the Romans. The Romans were called in to make peace. Instead of making peace, they conquered the area. They put up Herod as they appointed him as the leader of the Jews, even though he was a tyrannical builder, subjugating the Jews. But ultimately, he was in some form Jewish. And then we all know after he died, ultimately the Roman Empire came and conquered, didn't allow any autonomy of the Jews at all. destroyed the Second Temple, and exiled. A lot of people were killed, but a lot of Jews stayed. And during this period, it's called period number 4. I call it the Golden Age of Judaism, the period of the sages. We have a lot of material which is being produced, a lot of formulations of the Judaism. Basically, a lot of people explain that the sages realized the end is nigh, as they say in ancient English. Meaning, we have to prepare for a Judaism without the temple. We have to get our act in order. What's the big book that was created then? The Talmud, right? First the Mishnah, and then the Gemara, developing that. The Tanaim and the Amoraim were the rabbis the Tanaim were the rabbis mentioned in the Mishnah, and the Amoraim are the rabbis in the Gemara. And these were all created at that point. During that 500 years, pretty much under Roman rule. Eventually, that morphed into a Christianized empire called the Byzantine Empire, which ruled over Israel for about 1,000 years. 2 periods, as you can see, 5 and 6. Ultimately, the land of Israel only coming back under Ottoman rule in the 7th period until today. Who rules Israel? We're trying.
Israeli government.
We're trying. Okay, brief questions. We're going to have to do more on continue the Hanukkah story with what we celebrate. I want to focus on period 4, really. What happens after the Chazmanian rule, because really, in a large way, that's what we celebrate on Hanukkah. We'll get into that tomorrow, but I wanted to show you this history. Yes, go ahead.
I do have a question on period 4. Okay.
Yes, good.
I'm still kind of confused. What is Gemara?
Gemara is a commentary on the Mishnah.
In some ways, it's the discussions of the rabbis explaining and expounding and elaborating on the same ideas mentioned in the Mishnah.
When you open Gemara, the bit in the
Simplest
middle
way
is
is to say it's an
Mishnah.
explanation of the Mishnah, but
When you
it's
open
more than
Gemara,
that.
The bit in the middle is the Mishnah, and the outside is the Gemara.
No. But we'll talk more about it tomorrow. It's a good
That
question.
is the
Another
middle
question. Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue on film. The Talmud is there other things added like with the Talmud like together?
We print them usually with commentaries
Right.
from
Okay.
later ages, but the Talmud itself is a standalone work.
Commentary.
Yeah.
And I did have some more questions.
The Yavne
Tomorrow.
in Israel
It's
today,
soon.
is it the same Yavne as
Close enough. In terms of the archaeology, there might be a small area where they have actual remnants of the original Yavne. But the new Yavne was placed and called that because it's in close proximity to the original Yavne.
is Yehuda Hanasi buried there?
No, he's buried up in the north in the Galilee, where it says that the sages at the time, trying to escape the Romans, they went up to the north. He's buried in Beit Sharim. We actually have his burial cave. It's quite an impressive sight.
Wow.
We'll go there sometime.
What's his yard site?
We have a lot of places.
Not
to get.
sure. I'm not sure. We do. That's why we're here in yeshiva, and we're going to get a full. If you stay with us long enough, you'll get a full education, hopefully, and then the rest of your life you keep going on to. I will stop here. We have to stop and continue tomorrow,
What's the middle?
with your permission.
The page in Gemara.
The middle of the page is the Mishnah and the Gemara.